When old Odessa Callahan's will was read that grey March morning, Ruthie didn't get the house, she didn't get the land, she didn't get a single dollar from the bank. She got a barn. An old, leaning, half-forgotten barn at the edge of the woods. The kind of place folks around Willow Creek said should have been torn down 20 years ago. The kind of place her stepbrother Beau laughed out loud about right there in the lawyer's office. Her stepsister Lorraine wouldn't even look at her. Only Wesley, the youngest, kept his eyes on the floor, and his hands were shaking. Ruthie was 19 years old. For 12 of those years, she had washed Odessa's dishes, driven her to the doctor, sat beside her hospital bed, read the Bible out loud when Odessa's eyes got too tired to see the pages. 12 years, and all she got was a barn. But that night, while the others slept in the big farmhouse, counting their inheritance, Ruthie found something in the pocket of the sweater Odessa had died wearing, a small brass key, and a note written in a hand that trembled with love and with something else. Something like a promise, finally ready to be kept. Wait until they're asleep. You have to go alone. Mama's been getting ready for 12 years. Ruthie stood very still, and somewhere out past the pasture, the old barn was waiting. The rain came sideways that morning. Not the kind of rain that washes things clean. The kind that soaks into your bones and stays there. The kind that makes an old farmhouse creak like it's remembering things it would rather forget. Ruthie Ainsworth sat in the back of Attorney Whitcomb's office, 19 years old, wearing the black dress Odessa had bought her 2 Christmases ago. The one Odessa said made her look like a woman, not a girl anymore. Ruthie hadn't felt like a woman that morning. She hadn't felt like anything at all. Because 3 days earlier, she had walked into Odessa's bedroom with a cup of chamomile tea and found her mother sitting up against the pillows, eyes closed, a small smile on her face, like she'd just heard good news. Except Odessa wasn't hearing anything anymore. Ruthie had set the tea down on the nightstand, very carefully, like the noise might wake her. And then she had sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, not crying, just holding Odessa's hand. It was still warm. That was the part Ruthie couldn't stop thinking about. Sitting in Whitcomb's office, the rain hitting the windows, Beau clearing his throat every 30 seconds, Lorraine flipping through her phone. Odessa's hand had still been warm. And now, Ruthie was here, in a wooden chair, listening to a man in a grey suit read words she didn't understand. To my son, Beau Callahan, I bequeath the north and east pasture, approximately 200 acres. Beau leaned back, crossed his arms, nodded once, like he'd expected nothing less. To my daughter, Lorraine Callahan, I bequeath the main house, including all its contents and the surrounding 3 acres. Lorraine didn't look up from her phone, but her thumb stopped moving. To my son, Wesley Callahan, I bequeath the savings account at First Vermont Federal, balance of approximately $42,000. Wesley made a small sound, almost a cough, almost a sob. He pressed his fist to his mouth. Ruthie waited. She wasn't expecting anything. She really wasn't. She'd told herself that on the drive over. She'd told herself that 100 times in the last 3 days. You are not a Callahan. You are an Ainsworth. You have never been in the will. You are not supposed to be in the will. Except Odessa had held her hand every night for 12 years. Odessa had called her my girl. Odessa had cried at her high school graduation and said, "Look at you. Just look at you." Odessa had been her mother. Attorney Whitcomb cleared his throat. To Ruthie Ainsworth. Beau looked up, sharp, like a dog hearing a stick snap. Ruthie stopped breathing. I bequeath the old North Barn and the 1-acre parcel of land surrounding it. Silence. Then Beau laughed, just once. Just a short, hard bark of a laugh. The barn, he said. Whitcomb didn't look up. Yes. The old barn. Yes, Mr. Callahan. The one that's been falling down since I was in high school. That is the property listed, yes? Beau shook his head, slow, amused. He looked at Lorraine. Lorraine finally looked up from her phone. She looked at Ruthie. And for one strange flickering second, Ruthie could have sworn Lorraine's eyes weren't cold. They were something else, something Ruthie couldn't name. Then Lorraine looked away. Fair enough, Lorraine said quietly. Wesley made another sound, louder. He pushed back his chair, stood up too fast, sat down again. Whitcomb kept reading. Something about property taxes, something about a 30-day timeline. Ruthie stopped listening. The barn. 12 years. 12 years of scrubbing floors and driving to doctor's appointments. 12 years of holding Odessa's hair back when the medicine made her sick. 12 years of Christmas mornings with no stocking for her over the fireplace. 12 years. And she got a barn. Ruthie stared down at her hands, folded neat in her lap. The knuckles were white. Don't cry. Don't you dare cry in front of them. Not one tear. She lifted her chin. She looked straight at the window. At the rain. The rain kept coming, sideways, like it was angry too. Now, let me tell you how Ruthie got there. To that chair, to that barn, to that morning, because the story doesn't start with a will. It starts with a snowstorm. 13 years ago, when Ruthie was 6 years old. Her mother's name was Iris. Her father's name was Peter. They were driving home from a Christmas Eve service in Burlington. A truck came around the bend on Route 7. The road was black ice. That was all it took. Ruthie was in the back seat. She was wearing a red velvet dress with a white ribbon at the collar. Her mother had braided her hair that morning. 2 braids, with little sprigs of holly tucked into the ends. Ruthie doesn't remember the crash. She remembers waking up in the hospital. She remembers a woman in scrubs telling her that her parents had gone to be with Jesus. She remembers thinking that was a strange way to put it, because Jesus lived in the sky, and her mother had been afraid of heights. That was Christmas 2011. For the next year, Ruthie lived at St. Bernadette's Children's Home in Rutland. She stopped talking for the first 4 months. She wet the bed for the first 6. She wouldn't let anyone braid her hair. Then one day in the fall of 2012, a woman came to the home. The woman was tall, broad shoulders, grey hair pulled back. She wore a barn coat that smelled like hay and diesel. Her boots were muddy. Her hands were rough and red from cold. She didn't look like a mother. She looked like a farmer, which is exactly what she was. Odessa Callahan, 51 years old, widowed 2 years earlier. Owner of a 250-acre dairy farm in Willow Creek, Vermont. The social worker crouched down in front of Ruthie. "Sweetheart," she said, "this is Miss Odessa. She's come a long way to meet you." Ruthie stared at the floor. Odessa didn't say anything. She just crouched down. Slow, careful. Her knees popped when she went down. She didn't seem to care. "Hi, Ruthie," she said. Her voice was low and warm and a little rough, like river stones. Ruthie didn't answer. Odessa didn't push. She just stayed there, crouched, quiet, for a long, long time. And then she said something Ruthie would remember for the rest of her life. "I don't need you to talk. I don't need you to smile. I don't need you to like me today, or tomorrow, or ever if you don't want to." Ruthie looked up, just a little, just enough to see Odessa's eyes. They were grey, like the sky before snow. "But if you want, you can come home with me. And there's a room. It's got a window that faces east, so you can watch the sun come up. And there's a quilt on the bed my mother made. It's soft. And there's a cat. His name is Butter. He's stupid, but he's kind." Ruthie didn't move. Odessa waited. "You don't have to decide today. I can come back tomorrow, or next week, or next month." Ruthie whispered something. Odessa leaned closer. "What was that, honey? Is the cat really named Butter?" Odessa smiled. It was the first smile Ruthie had seen from a grown-up in almost a year that felt real. "Cross my heart," Odessa said. Ruthie stood up. She walked over to Odessa, slow, careful, and she put her small hand in Odessa's rough one. "Okay," she said. That was how it started. Willow Creek was 2 hours north of Rutland. The road wound through mountains that turned gold and red in October. Ruthie sat in the passenger seat of Odessa's old Ford pickup. She kept looking at Odessa out of the corner of her eye, waiting for the moment the softness would go away. It never came. Odessa didn't talk much on the drive. She just hummed. Old hymns, in the garden, blessed assurance. It is well. When they pulled up to the farmhouse, Ruthie's breath caught. The house was white, 2 stories, a wide front porch with a swing, A big red barn behind it, 2 silos, a wooden fence around the pasture, and cows moving slow across the grass in the late afternoon light. It looked like a picture from a book. Odessa turned off the truck. She sat there for a second, both hands on the wheel. Then she looked at Ruthie. "Welcome home, honey." Ruthie's throat closed up. She hadn't heard those words in a year. She started to cry. Not loud, not messy, just tears, quiet, sliding down her cheeks. Odessa didn't reach for her, didn't hush her, didn't tell her it was going to be okay. She just sat there and waited. And after a long time, she said, "Take as long as you need, Ruthie. I'll be right here." That was the moment Ruthie decided she would love Odessa Callahan for the rest of her life. She didn't know then that Odessa had 3 grown children. She would find out soon enough. Beau was the oldest, 23 at the time, living in Burlington. He came home the first weekend after Ruthie moved in. He walked into the kitchen, saw Ruthie sitting at the table, stopped. "Ma, who's this?" Odessa was at the stove. She didn't turn around. "This is Ruthie. She's living here now." "What do you mean, living here?" "I mean, living here. Ma, come on." Odessa turned, slow, wooden spoon in her hand. "Beau." Just his name. That was all she said. But Beau shut his mouth. He looked at Ruthie, grabbed a beer from the fridge, walked out. He didn't say hello. That was Beau. Lorraine came the next weekend, 20 years old, home from college. She walked past Ruthie into the kitchen, whispered fast and sharp to Odessa. Words like, "What were you thinking?" and "How long is she staying?" Odessa's voice, low and steady, said one thing back. "She's staying." That was Lorraine. Wesley came third. He was 15, just a boy. He came home from school and saw Ruthie sitting on the couch with butter curled up in her lap. He tilted his head. "You're the new kid?" Ruthie nodded. "I'm Wesley." "I'm Ruthie." "You like cats?" "Yes." "Cool." He walked to the kitchen, came back with a granola bar, broke it in half, handed her half. "Welcome home." Then he went upstairs to do his homework. That was Wesley. The years passed. Ruthie grew. She turned 8, then 10, then 12. She learned how to feed the cows. She learned how to bake bread from Odessa's mother's recipe. She learned how to drive the old tractor by 14. Odessa loved her. Every day. Loud and quiet and endless. But Beau, Lorraine and Wesley were not Odessa's own children. That was something Ruthie didn't understand for a long time. They were the children of Elias Callahan, Odessa's late husband. Their real mother had been a woman named Marion. Marion had died of a fast and terrible illness when Wesley was 3, Lorraine was 8, and Beau was 11. Elias had married Odessa 2 years later. Odessa had raised those 3 children, loved them, fed them, bandaged their knees. But she had never been Mama. She had always been Odessa. And in the deep private part of Odessa's heart, there had always been a small quiet ache. The ache of a woman who had prayed her whole married life for a child of her own, and never received one. Ruthie didn't know that. She only knew that Odessa loved her, and that the other 3 did not. Beau treated her like a hired hand, handed her his coat when he came home, asked when dinner would be ready. Never please, never thank you. Lorraine treated her like a ghost, walked past her in the hallway, made small, sharp comments about her hair, her clothes, the way she held her fork. Wesley was the strange one. Wesley was kind. When it was just the 2 of them, when Beau was gone, when Lorraine was gone, Wesley would talk to her in the barn. He would ask about school, tell her about the girl he liked. He would call her Rue, like a sister. But the second Beau walked in, Wesley would go quiet, step away, look at the floor. I was afraid of his own brother. Ruthie could see it, even at 8 years old, even without the words for it. And that fear was stronger than his love. Ruthie forgave him for it every time. She didn't know why. She just did. Christmas 2013. Ruthie was 7. Odessa hung 4 stockings over the fireplace. Christmas morning, Ruthie's was on the floor. She didn't tell Odessa. She picked it up, put it back, filled it herself with candy from the kitchen so Odessa wouldn't notice. Thanksgiving 2015. Ruthie was 9. She helped Odessa cook for 2 days. At dinner, there were only 5 place settings. Beau and his girlfriend, Lorraine and her boyfriend, Wesley, Odessa, no Ruthie. Odessa saw it before she sat down. Her face went pale. "Where's Ruthie's plate?" Lorraine shrugged. "I only counted 5. There are 6 of us, Ma. There are 6. Odessa got up, went to the cabinet, got another plate, set it down. Hard. "Ruthie, come eat." Ruthie came out of the kitchen, her apron still on, cheeks red from the oven. Nobody said grace that year. Later that night, when everyone was gone, Odessa found Ruthie in the kitchen, washing dishes, alone. "You are my daughter. Do you hear me?" "Yes." "Say it back." "I'm your daughter." "Louder." "I'm your daughter." "Good. Never forget that." "I won't." But she almost did. Because the years kept coming, and Beau kept treating her like the help, and Lorraine kept treating her like a ghost, and Wesley kept looking at the floor. Little by little, Ruthie started to wonder, am I really her daughter? Or am I just the girl she picked up from a home? She never asked Odessa. She was too afraid of the answer. Ruthie was 16, mud season in Vermont. Odessa had been coughing for a week. She said it was a cold. She said she was fine. But on the 10th day, Ruthie found Odessa sitting on the edge of the tub in the upstairs bathroom. Bent forward, one hand pressed to her chest. There was blood in the sink. "Odessa, it's nothing, honey. You're bleeding." I bit my cheek. "Odessa, please let me take you to the doctor." Odessa closed her eyes. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she said, "All right." They drove to the clinic in Middlebury. Ruthie sat in the waiting room for 2 hours. When Odessa came out, she was carrying a folder full of papers. She didn't show Ruthie what was in it. "They want me to see a specialist in Burlington." "When?" "Next week. I'll drive you." "You don't have to, honey. I'll drive you." Odessa looked at her for a long time, and then she said very quietly, "Okay, Ruthie. Okay." Odessa never told Ruthie the diagnosis. Not that year. Not the year after. Not the year after that. She just kept going to appointments. Taking medicine. Ruthie didn't recognize. Losing weight so slow it was hard to see unless you looked at old photos. Ruthie knew. Of course she knew. But every time she tried to bring it up, Odessa would shake her head, take Ruthie's hands, and say, "Not yet, honey, not yet." So Ruthie kept driving her, kept making her tea, kept holding her hand, kept not asking, because that was what Odessa wanted. The end came fast. March 2024. 12 years, almost to the day since Odessa had picked Ruthie up from St. Bernadette's. Odessa had been getting weaker for months. She sat by the kitchen window most days, wrapped in the old quilt her mother had made. She watched the birds. The night before she died, she asked Ruthie to sit with her on the couch. Ruthie sat. Odessa was quiet for a long time. She held Ruthie's hand. Her fingers were thin and cold. "Ruthie." "Yes." "I need you to promise me something. Anything. When I'm gone, honey, listen to me. When I'm gone, I need you to be brave. Braver than you have ever been in your whole life." "Odessa, please. Promise me." "I promise." Odessa closed her eyes. She smiled, just a little. "Good girl. Good girl." She fell asleep on the couch that night. Ruthie covered her with the quilt, kissed her forehead, went upstairs to bed. In the morning, when Ruthie came down with a cup of chamomile tea, Odessa was sitting up against the pillows in her own bed. Eyes closed, a small smile on her face, like she'd just heard good news. Ruthie set the tea down. She held Odessa's hand for a long time. It was still warm. Beau came home the next day, walked past Ruthie without looking at her, started opening drawers. "Where's the checkbook?" Ruthie stared at him. "Ruthie, the checkbook, where is it?" "She just died, Beau." "I know. Where's the checkbook?" Lorraine came the day after. Walked through the house like she was already assessing it, running her hand along the mantelpiece, checking behind picture frames. Wesley came last. He came at night, walked into the kitchen where Ruthie was sitting alone. He pulled out a chair, sat down, didn't say anything. After a while, he reached across the table, put his hand on hers. His hand was shaking. "Rue?" She looked up. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." She didn't know what he was apologizing for. Not yet. Now the funeral was over. The will had been read. The rain was still coming sideways. Ruthie stood up, picked up the small envelope Whitcomb slid across the table. The deed to the barn. "Miss Ainsworth, you have 30 days. "Thank you." She walked out. Beau's voice followed her down the hall. "We'll call the demo crew Monday." "Get the salvage company too," Lorraine said. "There might be copper in the walls." Wesley didn't say anything. Ruthie drove home in Odessa's old truck. The wipers barely kept up with the rain. When she pulled into the driveway, she sat in the truck for a long time, both hands on the wheel, just like Odessa used to sit. She looked at the house, the porch, the swing. Then she looked past the pasture, to the old barn. It stood at the edge of the woods, grey, silent, slightly leaning. Ruthie had never been inside, not once, in 12 years. Whenever she had asked as a child, Odessa had smiled that quiet smile. "Some places aren't ready to be opened yet, honey." Ruthie had thought Odessa meant it was unsafe. Rotten floors, loose nails. Now she stared at it through the rain. Some places aren't ready to be opened yet. She went inside the farmhouse. Beau and Lorraine weren't back yet. Wesley's car was gone. Ruthie was alone. She went upstairs. Not to her room over the garage, to Odessa's bedroom. The teacup was still on the nightstand. Someone had drawn the curtains closed. Ruthie opened them. Pale grey light filled the room. Odessa's cardigan was draped over the back of the rocking chair. The blue one. The one that still smelled like her. Ruthie picked it up, held it to her face. Lavender, and ivory soap, and a little bit of hay. She started to cry, loud, ugly, her whole body shaking, like a child. She cried for a long time, and then she reached into the pocket of the cardigan. She didn't know why, just to feel something Odessa's hand had touched. Her fingers closed around something. Small, metal, cold. She pulled it out. A brass key. Old, tarnished. Ruthie stared at it. She reached into the pocket again. There was a folded piece of paper, the size of a napkin. She unfolded it with hands that had suddenly stopped shaking. The handwriting was Odessa's, but barely, trembling. "Wait until they're asleep. You have to go alone. Mama's been getting ready for 12 years. Ruthie read it 3 times. Her heart was hammering. Mama. Odessa had never signed anything Mama. Not birthday cards, not permission slips, not a single note in 12 years. She had always signed Love Odessa, because she had never been sure Ruthie wanted her to be Mama. But at the very end, when her hand could barely hold a pen, she had signed it Mama. Ruthie sat down on the edge of the bed. The brass key felt very heavy in her palm. That night, Ruthie made dinner for Beau and Lorraine. Pot roast, set the table, poured the wine. Beau ate 2 helpings and complained about the salt. Lorraine picked at her food and scrolled her phone. Wesley didn't come to dinner. He was in his old bedroom upstairs, pacing. After dinner, Ruthie washed the dishes, wiped the counters, turned off the lights. She went up to her room over the garage. She sat on her bed, fully dressed, in the dark. She waited. Beau went to bed at 11, Lorraine at midnight. Wesley went quiet around 1. At 2 in the morning, Ruthie stood up. She put on Odessa's blue cardigan, put the brass key in her pocket, walked down the stairs, skipping the 3rd step from the top because it creaked, through the kitchen, out the back door, into the yard. The rain had stopped. The moon was out. The fields were silver. The old barn stood at the edge of the woods, waiting. Ruthie took 1 step forward, then another. Then she heard something behind her. A soft creak. The kitchen door opening. She froze. She turned. Lorraine was standing on the back porch, barefoot, white nightgown, arms wrapped around her ribs. For a long second, neither of them moved. Then Lorraine walked down the porch steps, across the wet grass, stopped 6 feet away. "Ruthie? Lorraine? Where are you going? Ruthie didn't answer. Lorraine's voice dropped. Don't let Beau find out. What? Don't let him find out you're going out there. Don't let him see you near that barn. Do you understand me? Lorraine, Ruthie, please listen to me. Something in Lorraine's face was breaking, a crack in a mask she had worn for 12 years. You don't know him. You have never known, because I have spent every day of the last 12 years making sure you never knew. Ruthie couldn't speak. Lorraine reached into the pocket of her nightgown, pulled out a small photo album, held it out. Take this. Read it tonight. Don't let him see it. Don't let anyone see it. And whatever you find in that barn, please, don't tell him. Then Lorraine turned, walked back across the grass, back into the house. The door clicked shut. Ruthie stood alone in the moonlight, the brass key in her pocket, the photo album in her hand, the old barn waiting. She took a breath. She started walking. The grass was wet. Ruthie's shoes soaked through by the time she'd crossed the pasture. She didn't care. She barely noticed. The photo album was tucked under her arm like a Bible she was afraid to drop. The barn grew bigger with every step. It had never looked this tall from the house, from the kitchen window, from the porch swing. It had always looked small, sagging, but standing in front of it now, at 2 in the morning, with the moon behind it. The barn looked like a cathedral. Ruthie stopped. Her breath came out white. The doors were huge, old oak, weathered to silver. A heavy chain hung across the handles, not locked, just wrapped. Ruthie's hand went to her pocket. The brass key was still there. She lifted the chain. It clinked loud in the silence. She flinched, looked back at the house. No lights, no movement. She pushed the doors. They resisted, then gave. A long, low groan of wood remembering how to open. She stepped inside, and she froze, because the barn wasn't empty. Not the way Beau made it sound. Not the way anyone in that family had ever made it sound. The barn was full. Full of the same tired things every old barn is full of. Broken tools, an old wagon, a pyramid of dusty milk cans, coils of rusted wire. But every single thing had been arranged, not stacked, not shoved, arranged. Like someone had spent years putting it just so. Like a shopkeeper closing up for the night. Odessa. Odessa had been in here. For a long time, for years and years, and nobody had known. Ruthie walked in slow. Her feet found a path that had been swept clean, a narrow trail, straight to the back corner, under an American flag folded neat over a wooden beam. There was a pile of hay, innocent looking, ordinary, except the dust on the floor around it was disturbed, in the shape of 2 knees, like someone had been kneeling, recently. Ruthie knelt too. She brushed the hay aside, and she saw it, a square, cut into the floorboards. Perfect. An iron ring in the middle. She wrapped her fingers around the ring, and she pulled. The trapdoor lifted with a sigh. Cool air rose out of it. Not damp, not mouldy. The air smelled like cedar, and ink, and Odessa's hand cream. Ruthie stopped breathing. A narrow stone staircase disappeared into the dark below. She stood up, legs shaking. She looked around the barn. Her eyes found an old brass lantern hanging from a rusted hook. She walked to it. There was oil inside. Fresh oil. Somebody had refilled this lantern, recently. Her hands trembled as she struck the match. It took 3 tries. The wick caught. A warm gold flame bloomed inside the glass. She stood at the top of the stairs. She looked down, and she went. She counted the steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Her hand trailed along the stone wall. Cool. Dry. 7, 8, 9, 10. Her foot hit flat ground. She lifted the lantern, and she made a small sound. Not a word, not a cry. Just the sound a person makes when they walk into a place they weren't ready for. She was standing in a room, not a cellar. A room. The walls were stone, rough cut, but the floor was wood, recent wood, sanded smooth. There was a rag rug in the middle, braided, red and blue and cream. There was a rocking chair, wooden, worn. The seat cushion was faded blue calico. Ruthie recognized the fabric. It had come from an apron Odessa used to wear on Sundays. There was a small table beside the chair, a cross on the wall, simple, handmade, a bookshelf, a cedar chest, a lamp. And on every wall in rough wooden frames, Odessa must have hammered together herself. Photographs of Ruthie. Ruthie at 7, standing on the porch her first day, wearing a coat 2 sizes too big. Ruthie at 8, feeding a calf from a bottle. Ruthie at 10, missing a front tooth, grinning. Ruthie at 12, hair in braids, reading a book on the porch swing. Ruthie at 15, in her homecoming dress. Ruthie at 17, behind the wheel of the tractor. Ruthie at 18, graduation cap in hand. Ruthie at 19, taken this past Christmas. Wesley had taken the picture. Ruthie set the lantern down because her hand was shaking too badly to hold it. She sat down in the rocking chair. She looked around. She said out loud in a voice that didn't sound like hers, "Odessa, what did you do?" But she already knew. Odessa had built a chapel to her daughter, and she had been coming here for years to sit, to pray, to watch Ruthie grow up in pictures, to love a girl who never knew she was being loved this way. Ruthie began to weep, not politely, not the way she had at the funeral. She wept the way you weep when you find out someone has been carrying you your whole life, and you had no idea. After a long time, Ruthie wiped her face on the sleeve of the blue cardigan, and she looked at the cedar chest. It sat at the foot of the rocking chair, like a footstool, like something that had waited. She knelt in front of it. She lifted the lid. The scent that came up was cedar and paper, and something like church candles inside the chest. 12 envelopes, each one tied with a piece of blue ribbon, each one addressed in Odessa's careful hand. For Ruthie, 2012, for Ruthie, 2013, down to for Ruthie, 2023. Ruthie's hand went to her mouth. 12 letters, one for every year Odessa had been her mother. Underneath the envelopes, a book, a leather journal, held together with a leather cord tied around it in a bow. She lifted it out. She opened it. The first page said in Odessa's hand, "If you are reading this, Ruthie, it means I could not tell you with my own mouth. Forgive me for that. Start with 2012. Read them in order. Take your time. I have waited 12 years. You do not need to hurry." Ruthie closed the journal. She reached for the first envelope. "My dearest Ruthie, you are 7 years old today. You have been here for 4 months. You slept through the night for the first time last week. I stood outside your door until sunrise just to hear you breathing. I did not know a person could love a stranger this much. Butter has decided you are his person. He sleeps on your feet. He hisses at me. I do not mind. He picked well. I hope one day you will read this. I hope one day you will know that a woman in Vermont started praying for you the day she saw your face on the news, and that she has not stopped, and that she will not stop, not ever. All my love, Mama." Ruthie put the letter down. She pressed her palms against her eyes. The day she saw your face on the news. She had never told Ruthie that. Ruthie had always thought Odessa found her the ordinary way. Through the social worker, through St. Bernadette's, through a form and a home study. But that wasn't how it happened. Odessa had seen Ruthie on the news. Her chest hurt. She reached for the next letter. Every letter was a window into a year. The year Ruthie learned to bake bread. Odessa wrote that Ruthie's first loaf came out flat as a plate, but that Odessa had eaten a slice with butter and cried in the kitchen while Ruthie was outside feeding chickens. She wanted to be like me, Odessa wrote. God forgive me, I did not know I wanted anything so much until I heard her say that. The year Ruthie won a spelling bee. Odessa wrote that she had bought a small silver frame for the certificate, and she was going to hang it in the barn, where Ruthie could not see it, because Beau had come home that weekend and mocked Ruthie for wanting to put it on the fridge. The year Ruthie broke her arm falling off the loft ladder. Odessa wrote that when the nurse asked if she was the mother, she had said yes without hesitating. I cried in the parking lot afterward, Odessa wrote. Because I have been so afraid that a nurse would ask for paperwork, and that Ruthie would find out she was still on paper, only a foster placement that was never finalized. Ruthie stopped reading. Only a foster placement that had never been finalized. Her stomach turned. She had thought, for 12 years she had thought, that the adoption had been finalized. She had been wrong. She kept reading. Bo found out I was going to file the paperwork. I do not know how. He came to see me. He sat at my kitchen table, and he told me that if I signed those papers, he would contest the will. He would drag her name through court. He would say I was not competent. He would say she manipulated me. He would say terrible things about her. He would ruin her life to spite me. I could not risk it. I know it makes me a coward. But she had already lost her mother once. I could not make her lose another one in a courtroom fight, so I did not sign the papers. And I have spent every year since figuring out other ways to protect her. Quiet ways, ways he cannot fight in court. The barn is one of them. You will understand, honey, when you find this. Ruthie sat there, frozen. Her mother had been afraid. Her mother had been afraid of her own stepson for 12 years. She thought about all the little things. Why Odessa never let Bo drive her to appointments. Why Odessa kept her checkbook locked in a drawer even from her own children. Why Odessa insisted on putting Ruthie on her health insurance 3 years ago, just to be safe. From what? From him. She reached for the 2021 letter. She almost didn't open it. She remembered 2021. The coffee, the blood in the sink. The specialist in Burlington. She opened it anyway. My dearest Ruthie, they gave me a diagnosis today. I will not write the word here. Words like that have too much power. I do not want the word to live in this letter. They said, maybe 3 years. Maybe 4 if I fight hard. I am not going to tell you. I know how that sounds. But listen, honey, you are 16. You have your whole life in front of you. You are supposed to go to college. You are supposed to fall in love and break your heart and put it back together. You are not supposed to sit in a hospice with an old woman. I know you. I know exactly what you would do if I told you. You would drop out of school. You would move into my bedroom. You would give me every day you have left in the world, and I love you too much to let you. So I am going to lie to you. I am going to say it is just a cough. I am going to keep telling you that you are going to be a teacher or a nurse or a poet. And when it gets bad, I'm going to hide it from you. If God is kind, I will make it look like I died in my sleep. Please forgive me for that. If you are reading this, he said no. So I need you to promise me something, my girl. Live. Live all the way. Don't shrink because I am gone. Take up every inch of your life. Live like someone loves you, because someone does. Someone always will, even when you cannot see her. All my love, Mama. Ruthie couldn't breathe. She got down on the floor, on the rag rug, her forehead pressed to it. She cried the way she had never cried in her life, because Odessa had known. Odessa had known for 3 years, and she had spent every one of those years pretending she was fine. So Ruthie could go to school, so Ruthie could keep being a girl, so Ruthie could keep being free. Odessa had died, so Ruthie could keep living. She sat up, wiped her face, reached for the photo album Lorraine had given her. She hadn't opened it yet. She opened it now. The first page was a photo of Bo, age 9, standing over a broken model airplane. Lorraine, age 6, on the floor crying. The handwriting on the back said in a girl's careful print. He said, I could hold it. Then he said I broke it. He locked me out of my room for a week. The next photo. Lorraine, 12, with a black eye. He said I fell off the fence. I did not. He would not let me come inside until I said I fell. The next. Lorraine in her prom dress. Alone. He told my date I had a boyfriend. He lied. My date left. I sat on the porch until midnight. Ruthie flipped faster. Pages and pages. Every page a small private cruelty. And then, halfway through the album, the photos changed. They were of Ruthie. Ruthie at 8, washing dishes, alone. He made her wash all our dishes at Christmas. I did nothing. Ruthie at 11, sitting on the porch, waiting for a school bus that was never going to come. He made her miss the field trip. I said nothing. Ruthie at 14, beside a birthday cake with no candles. He threw her candles in the trash. I saw. I said nothing. Ruthie stared at that photo. She remembered that birthday. She had told herself she didn't like candles anyway. For 5 years, Lorraine had been keeping a record. 12 years of a record. The last page had a folded letter tucked into the sleeve. Ruthie, I have been a coward my whole life. I did not protect you. I did not protect myself. I let him do what he did because I thought staying small was the same as staying safe. I am going to tell you something now, and you're going to hate me for it. I have known about the cellar for 2 years. Your mother asked me to help her when she got too weak to climb the stairs alone. She swore me to secrecy. I helped her carry the letters down. I helped her hang the frames. I sat with her while she wrote to you. I did not deserve to be part of that room. But she needed help, and she said I was the only one strong enough to keep the secret and weak enough to be trusted with it. I am telling you now because Bo is going to try to take the barn. He is going to tear it down. He was on the phone with a demolition company last night. Monday. He said Monday. You have 4 days. Whatever is in that cellar, get it out or find a way to protect it, because if he finds it, he will destroy it. Not because it is worth anything, because it was yours. I am so sorry, Ruthie. I am so sorry for every year I did nothing. Lorraine. Ruthie closed the album. She sat very still for a long time. Then she stood up. She wiped her face. She looked around the little chapel Odessa had built. She said out loud, 4 days. She climbed the stairs, stepped out of the barn. The sky was beginning to lighten, pale grey at the edges. A single bird had started to sing somewhere in the woods. She stood in the wet grass. She looked back at the barn. She whispered, I will not let him touch you. She meant the barn, and she meant Odessa, and she meant every letter, every photograph. She turned toward the house, and she saw a figure standing on the back porch. Wesley, still in his clothes from the day before. He had been sitting there, waiting. She walked up to him, stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. Rue, Wes, how long have you known? He looked at the floor. About the barn? How long? I didn't. Wes, I didn't know, but I heard him. Last night, on the phone, talking to a lawyer. And he's not just going to demolish the barn, Rue. He's going to try to say Ma wasn't in her right mind when she signed the will. He's going to say the whole will was tampered with. He's going to say you manipulated her. He has no proof. He doesn't need proof. He needs a court date. He needs to drag it out until you can't afford a lawyer, until you give up. Ruthie sat down on the bottom step in the wet grass. Wesley sat beside her. After a long time, she said, Wes, why now? What? You have been silent for 12 years. Why now? Wesley looked out at the fields. His eyes were wet. Because I saw the photo. The one on the mantel, from your graduation. Ma is holding you and you're both laughing. And you look like her, Rue. You look like her more than any of us ever did. And I stood in front of that photo for an hour last night. And I finally understood. Understood what? That she picked you. And she never really picked us. And that is not your fault. And it was never your fault. And I have been letting my brother punish you for something that was never your fault. He turned to face her. His voice broke. I'm not letting him take the barn, Rue. I don't care what he does to me. I'm done being scared of him. Ruthie stared at him. She started to cry again, softly. He took her hand. She let him. They sat there, on the wet steps, as the sun came up. Be braver than you have ever been, Odessa had said. Ruthie stood up, squeezed Wesley's hand once, hard, and she went inside to make a phone call. The kitchen phone was old, the kind with a curly cord, the kind Odessa had refused to replace for 30 years. Ruthie picked it up. Her hand was steady, which surprised her, because inside her chest everything was shaking. The number was written on a slip of paper Wesley had pulled out of his wallet. wrinkled, folded 4 times. It belonged to a lawyer, a woman named Priscilla Amory. Wesley had gone to high school with her son. She had a small practice in Rutland. "She's a bulldog," Wesley had said. "In a cardigan." Ruthie dialed. It rang twice. "Amory Law." The voice was crisp, middle-aged, a woman who had already been at her desk for 2 hours. Ruthie's throat closed. For one terrible second she couldn't speak. Then she said, "My mother died 4 days ago." "I'm sorry for your loss," Priscilla said. "My stepbrother is going to sue me. He is going to say I manipulated her. He is going to try to tear down a barn on Monday morning that my mother left to me." Priscilla did not say anything for a moment. Then she said, "Where are you calling from?" "Willow Creek. Give me an hour." She hung up. Ruthie stood in the kitchen, holding the receiver. Wesley was in the doorway watching her. Behind him in the hall, a shadow moved. Beau. He was in his robe, bare feet, hair sticking up. He had heard the phone. He walked into the kitchen slow. "Ruthie." "Yes." "Who was that?" "A friend." "At 6 in the morning." "Yes." He looked at Wesley. Wesley did not look at the floor. Wesley looked back. Beau blinked. Just once. But Ruthie saw it. The tiny crack. Beau turned to Ruthie, smiled a smile that did not touch his eyes. "Sweetheart, whatever you think you're doing, please stop. I am not your sweetheart." "Ruthie, I am not your sweetheart, Beau. You have been in this house because of my mother's generosity for 12 years, and I have never asked you for anything. I am asking now. Do not make this ugly. Take what you want out of the barn. Sign the deed back over to me, and I will give you enough money to start somewhere else." "No." Beau's smile went away. "Excuse me." "No, Beau." "Ruthie." "I said no." He took 1 step closer. Wesley moved. 1 step. Between them. "Wes." "Beau." "Wes. Move." "No." "Wesley." "I said no." The kitchen went so quiet, Ruthie could hear the drip of the coffee maker. Beau laughed. A short, ugly bark. He looked at Ruthie. "You have turned my brother against me." "He is not against you. He is finally beside her." Beau's face changed. He looked away. He walked out. I did not slam the door. He did not need to. Priscilla Amory pulled up the driveway 48 minutes later. She was small, round, 60-something, silver hair, reading glasses on a chain, a quilted vest over a wool cardigan. She looked like somebody's grandmother. She got out of the car carrying a briefcase that had seen 10,000 miles. Ruthie met her on the porch. Priscilla looked at her, up, down. Then she said, "All right, honey, show me the barn." Ruthie showed her, the trap door, the stairs, the little chapel below. Priscilla stood in the middle of the room for a long time. She did not touch anything. She looked at the walls of photographs, the cedar chest, the rocking chair. She said 1 word. "Well?" Then she said, "Who else knows about this?" "Me, Lorraine, Wesley now." "Not Beau, not Beau. Keep it that way." She turned to face Ruthie. "Honey, listen to me. Your stepbrother is going to try to say your mother was not competent. He is going to try to tear this barn down before a judge can put a stop to it. So we are going to do 3 things." "Yes, ma'am?" "First, we are going to file for an emergency injunction against demolition today. That will freeze everything while the will is contested." "Yes." "Second, I am going to bring in a photographer today to document every letter, every photograph, so that if this room ever ceases to exist, it will still exist on paper." "Yes." "Third, we are going to prepare for an emergency hearing, just on the injunction, not the whole will contest. That will take months. But the injunction we can get in front of a judge fast, because we have to." Ruthie's eyes were wet. "Yes, ma'am." Priscilla put a small hand on her arm. "Honey, I have done this for 32 years. I know a real mother when I see one, and that woman was your mother." "Yes, ma'am." "He does not get to erase that." "No, ma'am." "Good girl." The next 4 days moved fast. Priscilla filed the injunction by 3 that afternoon. A judge in Rutland signed a temporary restraining order by 5. The demolition company was notified by 7. Beau got the notice by 9. He was on his phone. In the hall, voice low, then loud, then a chair scraping, then a door slamming. He came out at 10, stood in the kitchen doorway, looked at Ruthie, at Wesley, at Lorraine, who was sitting at the kitchen table drinking tea. Very still. Lorraine did not look up. Bo said, "So this is how it's going to be?" Nobody answered. He said, "Fine." He walked out. He came back the next day with his own lawyer. A man in a suit from Burlington. Papers were filed. Words like undue influence and testamentary capacity started showing up on the kitchen table. Ruthie stopped reading them. She spent the days at the barn instead. Priscilla brought a photographer, a young man named Emmett. Very serious, very careful. He photographed every corner of the little chapel. On the second day, when Ruthie handed him the 12th letter to photograph, he looked at it for a long moment. Then he took off his glasses, wiped his eyes. "I'm sorry. I don't usually. It's okay. My mother died last year. I'm sorry. She never wrote me anything like this." He put his glasses back on, kept working. Ruthie thought about that all night, lying in her small room over the garage. She thought about all the mothers in the world, and all the daughters, and how few of them ever got the letters they should have gotten. She thought about how lucky she was. Even now, even bleeding, she was lucky. The emergency hearing was set for the following Thursday, just 8 days after Odessa's funeral. County Courthouse in Rutland. A grey stone building, a flagpole out front. Ruthie wore a black dress, simpler than the funeral. Odessa had bought it for her a year ago. It was too big now. Ruthie had lost weight. Priscilla noticed. She did not say anything. She just adjusted the collar. Gently, the way a grandmother would. Lorraine came with her. Lorraine had not left the house in a week. She had been sitting on the porch, or in the kitchen, or in the chair beside Ruthie's bed. Not saying much, just being near. She wore a grey dress. She had done Ruthie's hair that morning. 2 braids, with her own hands. Ruthie had almost cried when she felt Lorraine's fingers in her hair. Nobody had braided her hair since she was 6. Wesley met them at the courthouse. He was in a suit. He looked like a stranger. He looked like an adult. He held the door open. The courtroom was smaller than Ruthie expected. Wooden benches, high windows, a judge's bench with a small brass lamp. Bo was already there. Charcoal suit, hair combed back. He looked like a man who had never lost anything in his life. He glanced at Wesley, looked away. He glanced at Lorraine. He did not look away this time. His mouth tightened. Lorraine sat down next to Ruthie. She did not look at him. Priscilla laid out her folders, slow, careful, the way a farmer lays out tools before a long day. The judge came in. Grey hair, wire glasses, a woman, middle-aged. "Miss Amory, Your Honor, you have moved for a permanent injunction against demolition." "Yes, Your Honor." "On what grounds?" "Your Honor, the property at issue was the specific object of a specific and lucid bequest by the decedent, which the co-heirs are now seeking to destroy in advance of the will contest they themselves have filed. This is spoliation of evidence, or at minimum an attempt to render the object of the bequest worthless before it can be defended." The judge looked at Bo's lawyer. "Counselor." The Burlington lawyer stood, smoothed his tie. "He said the barn was structurally unsound. He said the demolition was for safety. He said his client was concerned about his stepsister's undue influence. He said the decedent was in poor health for years. Her judgment was affected. My client believes Miss Ainsworth, who was under his mother's roof by charity, exploited that condition." Ruthie's stomach turned. Priscilla put a hand on her arm. The judge said, "Miss Amory, response." Priscilla stood. "Your Honor, my client has 3 witnesses. May I call the first?" "Proceed." The defense calls Wesley Callahan. Wesley walked to the stand, hands shaking, put one on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. "Mr. Callahan, you are the son of the decedent." "Stepson." "Stepson, thank you. Would you describe your mother's relationship with Miss Ainsworth?" Wesley opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Ruthie. Ruthie nodded. "My mother loved her, more than she loved us." The courtroom went still. Bo made a small sound. His lawyer touched his arm. Wesley kept going. She raised us. But she loved Ruthie in a way she did not love us, because we did not need it, and Ruthie did. And my mother had a lot of love saved up. She had been waiting to give it to someone her whole life. The judge made a note. Priscilla said, "Did you ever at any point in the last 12 years observe your stepsister exert pressure, manipulation or coercion on your mother?" "No, ma'am." "Would you say the opposite?" "Yes, ma'am. My mother had to work to give Ruthie things, because Ruthie would refuse them. Ruthie would say she did not need a new coat. Ruthie would say she did not need to go to college. My mother had to insist, because Ruthie was raised in a place where she was taught not to want anything." Priscilla said, "Thank you. No further questions." Bo's lawyer stood. He tried. He asked Wesley whether he had ever been financially dependent on Ruthie. He asked whether Ruthie had promised him anything. Wesley said no. No, no. Then Bo's lawyer said, "Mr. Callahan, isn't it true you have been estranged from your brother for years?" "No, sir. No. I have been afraid of my brother for years. That is not the same thing." The Burlington lawyer stopped. He blinked. He sat down. Priscilla said, "The defense calls Lorraine Callahan." Bo turned in his chair, stared at his sister. Lorraine stood. She did not look at him. She walked to the stand, hand on the Bible, swore. "Miss Callahan, you are the stepdaughter of the decedent." "Yes." "Would you describe your relationship with Miss Ainsworth?" Lorraine was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I was cruel to her." The courtroom did not move. "You were cruel to her?" "Yes." "For how long?" 12 years. "Why?" Lorraine closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet. "Because I was scared of my brother." Bo's chair scraped. He half stood. His lawyer pulled him down. Lorraine did not look at him. "My brother has controlled our family since our father died. He tried to control our mother. She was harder to control than he thought, so he controlled me. And through me, he tried to control her. Whatever I got close to, he took. So I stayed away from Ruthie, on purpose. Because if I loved her, he would use that. Against her. Against me. Against my mother." Priscilla said, "Miss Callahan, did there come a point when your stepmother asked you for help?" "Yes." "When?" 2 years ago. She had built a room, under the barn, over many years. When she was strong, she carried things alone. But after she got sick, which she was, from 2021 on, even though she told nobody, she could not carry things anymore. She asked me, because I was the only person left who was quiet enough to keep the secret. Help her do what? Finish the room, hang the pictures, build the shelf, carry down the letters. What letters? The letters she had written to Ruthie. One for every year Ruthie had been her daughter. 12 of them. The judge set her pen down. Priscilla said, "Miss Callahan, at any point during those 2 years, did your mother seem to you to be anything other than lucid?" "My mother was the most lucid person I have ever known, until the last week of her life. And even then, when she could barely lift the pen, she kept lifting it. To finish that last letter." "Which letter?" 2023. "Do you have it?" "It is in evidence. Exhibit 12. Priscilla walked to the table, picked up a single envelope, blue ribbon. "Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would like to read from the last letter written by Odessa Callahan to her daughter, Ruthie Ainsworth, dated 3 weeks before her death, which we have authenticated through Miss Callahan's testimony." "Proceed." Priscilla opened the envelope. Ruthie's chest was tight. She had not read this letter yet. She had been saving it, like a person saves the last bite of something sweet. Priscilla began to read. "My dearest Ruthie, if you are reading this, then it is done, and I am with your father and mother. Yes, honey. Yours, not Elias, yours." Ruthie's hands went to her mouth. "I have to tell you something now, that I did not have the courage to tell you when I was alive. I told myself I would. Every year I told myself. I would sit her down when she is 10, when she is 12, when she is 15. And every year I looked at your face, and I thought, not yet. She is finally happy. Do not break it." So I am going to break it now. In a room, where I do not have to see your face when you find out. Ruthie, when you were a very small baby, your mother's name was Iris, Iris Ainsworth. She was born in 1971. She was orphaned in 1978. She was 7 years old. She was sent to a Catholic children's home in Rutland, St. Bernadette's, the same one where they took you 33 years later. The summer she arrived, I was 17 years old, and I was doing a summer of service at St. Bernadette's, under my Aunt Ruth Ann, who was a sister of mercy there. That is where your name comes from, honey. My Aunt Ruth Ann, the kindest woman I have ever known. Until you. Ruthie's tears were falling now. Beside her, Lorraine had reached out, was holding her hand. Wesley on the other side. Iris was small. She would not speak. She would not eat. She was the saddest little girl I had ever seen. My aunt asked me to sit with her. Just sit. Every day. All summer. So I did. And after 6 weeks, Iris started talking to me. She called me Sister Odessa, even though I was not a sister. She called me Sister Odessa because that is what she called any woman who was kind to her. I have been called many things in my life, honey. Wife, widow, farmer, mother, stepmother. Sister Odessa is the name I loved most because a 7-year-old girl gave it to me. In August, a family from Concord came to St. Bernadette's. They took Iris home. They were good people. I met them. I watched them sign the papers. Iris hugged me on the front steps of the home. She said, "When I grow up, I am going to have a daughter, and I'm going to love her the way you loved me." And then she got in the car, and I never saw her again. I went home to my father's farm. I married Elias 6 years later. Every year we were married, I prayed for a child. Elias made peace with it long before I did. I never quite made peace with it. I loved his children. I raised them as my own. But there was a small place in my heart that could not stop asking God for one that came from me. And then, in December 2011, 2 nights before Christmas, I was watching the news, and there was a story about a young couple who had died in a car accident in Rutland County, and they showed a photograph of the mother. Ruthie, honey. The picture on the news was of a woman named Iris Ainsworth. She was 39 years old. She had died alongside her husband, Peter. They had left a 6-year-old daughter named Ruthie. And I sat in my kitchen, and I stared at the television. And I knew, honey. I knew before they even said the name, because I would have known that face at 100 years old. That was my little Iris. My little Iris had grown up and had a daughter and named her Ruthie. And now that daughter was alone in the world. The next morning, I made a phone call. To St. Bernadette's, I asked if they knew where the child of Iris Ainsworth had been taken. They told me they could not discuss placements. So I drove there, that day, and I sat in the front office, and I asked to see anyone who might remember my Aunt Ruth Ann. A woman named Miss Delphine came out. She was in her 60s by then. She had known my aunt for 20 years. She had prayed with her. She had buried her. She listened to my story. She said she could not promise me anything. She said the process would take months. She said I would have to meet every standard the state set: home study, background check, references, every hoop, every form, every visit. She said, but if this is real, Odessa, and if God wants it, then be patient and do it right, and we will see. So I did it right. I did every form. I did every home visit. I waited every day of that year, not knowing if it would work, only knowing I would spend the rest of my life trying. And in the fall of 2012, they called me, and they said her name, and they asked if I still wanted to come and meet her. I was in the truck within the hour. Ruthie, my girl, my daughter. You were never charity. You were never a stranger I took in. You were the one I had been waiting for my whole life. I just did not know it, until I saw your face on the news. And I knew, you are not my adopted daughter. You are the daughter of the little girl who was my first daughter of the heart. You are a promise I made in 1978, and a promise God kept in 2011, and a promise I have been trying to be worthy of every day since. I did not save you, Ruthie. You saved me from dying without ever holding a child of my own. All my love, always, forever, even when you cannot see me. Mama. Priscilla stopped reading. The courtroom was completely silent. Somewhere in the back, a woman Ruthie did not know had started to cry. The judge took off her glasses. She set them down on the bench. She rubbed her eyes with one hand. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then the judge lifted her head. She looked at Beau's lawyer. Counselor, would you like to withdraw your motion regarding demolition? The Burlington lawyer stood slowly. He glanced at Beau. Beau was looking at the floor. Your Honor, we withdraw the motion. And the challenge to testamentary capacity. We will need to consult with our client. Do that today. In the meantime, I am issuing a permanent injunction against demolition of the property at issue, and I am ordering that the contents of said property, including but not limited to correspondence photographs and personal effects, be inventoried and preserved under seal pending resolution of any further contest of the will. She looked at Ruthie. She looked at her for a long time. Then she said, Miss Ainsworth. Ruthie stood up. Her legs were shaking. Yes, Your Honor. I am very sorry for your loss. Thank you, Your Honor. I have been on this bench for 18 years. I have heard a great many wills read. I have never heard a mother introduce herself to me like that. Whatever the paperwork says, wherever this case goes from here, in this courtroom, on this record, your mother was your mother. Ruthie's mouth trembled. She said, Thank you. Thank you. The judge nodded once. We are adjourned. Beau did not come home that night. He called Whitcomb the next morning. Withdrew the will contest. He signed the papers over. He got in his car and drove back to Burlington. He never came to Willow Creek again. Lorraine stayed. She moved out of her apartment in Boston. She took the guest room in the farmhouse. She started fixing the fence out by the north pasture. She was not good at it. Her hands blistered. She kept going. Wesley stayed too. He quit his job in town. He asked Ruthie if she could use help running the farm. Ruthie said yes. The three of them ate dinner together every night in the kitchen where Odessa used to hum hymns. Nobody said grace at first, then one night without planning to, Lorraine did. She stumbled through it. Her voice cracked. Nobody looked at her while she did it. When she was done, Wesley reached across the table, took her hand. Ruthie took her other hand. They sat like that for a long time. Three grown children of a woman who had loved them all, just differently. Spring came slowly to Willow Creek that year. The snow lingered into April. The daffodils came late. But when they finally came, the whole east pasture turned yellow. Ruthie stood on the front porch that morning with a cup of coffee. She was 20 years old now. Her hair was longer. Her hands were rougher. She wore Odessa's blue cardigan. She wore it almost every day. Behind her, the farmhouse was quiet. Lorraine was still asleep upstairs. Wesley was in the barn with the calves. Down the driveway, a small white church van was pulling up. Ruthie set her coffee on the railing. She walked down the porch steps. 6 girls climbed out of the van. Ages 8 to 12, their hair in braids, their eyes careful, cautious. They came from St. Bernadette's. Ruthie had started a program that fall. She called it Iris House. She had not told anyone why. A weekend program. Girls came to the farm. They fed the animals. They helped bake bread. They sat on the porch swing. They learned that a farm was a soft place, and that a woman with rough hands could still be kind. Miss Delphine had cried when Ruthie told her the plan. Miss Delphine was in her 70s now. She had helped Ruthie fill out every form. The first girl off the van was small, maybe 8 years old. Dark hair, big eyes. She was holding the hand of a slightly older girl who looked like she might be her sister. Ruthie crouched down. Her knees popped. She didn't seem to care. Hi, honey. The little girl didn't answer. I don't need you to talk, Ruthie said. I don't need you to smile. I don't need you to like me today, or tomorrow, or ever. The little girl's eyes went wide. But if you want, there is a cat inside. His name is Cream. He's Butter's grandson. He's not very smart, but he is kind. The little girl whispered something. Ruthie leaned closer. What was that, sweetheart? Is the cat really named Cream? Ruthie smiled. Cross my heart. The little girl let go of her sister's hand. She walked over. She put her small hand in Ruthie's rough one. Okay, she said. That afternoon, when the girls were down in the pasture with Wesley, Ruthie walked out to the old barn. She unlocked the chain, pushed open the doors, went inside. She swept the path clean the way Odessa had always kept it. She knelt in the corner, lifted the trap door. She went down. The little chapel had not changed. The photographs still hung. The rocking chair still waited. The cedar chest still sat at its foot. She sat in the rocking chair. She looked around. She said out loud in the quiet, "There was a little girl today, Mama. She reminded me of me." The room did not answer, but Ruthie could almost feel Odessa's hand on her shoulder. She sat there for a long time. Then she climbed the stairs, closed the trapdoor, walked back through the pasture, to the porch. She set 2 cups on the small table beside the rocking chair, one for herself, one for the empty chair beside her. She poured coffee into both. The little girl from that morning came up the porch steps. She stood at the railing. She looked at the 2 cups. "Miss Ruthie?" "Yes, honey." "Who is the other coffee for?" Ruthie looked out at the pasture. The daffodils were bright. The wind was soft. Somewhere behind the barn, Wesley was laughing at something one of the older girls had said. She smiled. "For someone who waited for me my whole life," she said, "and I didn't know it, so now I wait for her, every morning." The little girl thought about that for a long time. Then she reached up, carefully, and she straightened Odessa's coffee cup on the table. So it was exactly in the middle. "That's important," she said. Ruthie nodded. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. "Yes, sweetheart, it really is. Because love does not stop when someone leaves. It just learns to sit in an empty chair and wait for the ones who need it next." And a promise made on the steps of a children's home by a 17-year-old girl in the summer of 1978 to a 7-year-old orphan who called her sister Odessa. That promise did not end when Iris died. It did not end when Odessa died. It did not end at all. It just kept traveling, through time, through grief, through 12 letters buried under a barn, until it came to rest at last in the small hand of a little girl on a Vermont porch, who was learning for the first time in her life that she had always been someone worth waiting for.